Broadcasting from Salisbury University campus, this is WSDL Ocean City, NPR News Talk 90.7. Putting Delmarva first. Stay tuned for Delmarva Today with your host, Don Rush.
It's the end of an era for MAC Incorporated, which serves senior citizens. Welcome to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush. There's no doubt that we are about to see an explosion of retirees, with the baby boomers beginning to turn 65 just 5 years ago in 2011. And they are living longer. 1,900 men had a life expectancy of 48. By the year 2000, it jumped to 74. And looking ahead to 2050, women are expected to make it to 86. Men come in at 80. Here on the Eastern Shore, MAC Incorporated has become an institution for seniors, whose acronym stands for Maintaining Active Citizens. Peggy Bradford has been at the helm as executive director for 37 years. But she's retiring this year, and we have her in our studios. Welcome to the program, first of all.
Thank you. I'm so thrilled to be here with you and your listeners this morning.
So, was this something, a decision that you had been planning on, or what's the background here?
The background is, well, for years I told myself if I ever got caught up, I could think about retirement, and the reality came that you'll never catch up. But I think some of the impetus came from the completion of the construction of an educational wing to our facility in Salisbury, along with the understanding that our agency was in good shape, was growing rapidly, but things were stable, and now was probably a good time for change.
So now you've been there a very long time, and as I just mentioned a moment ago, the baby boomers are just beginning to retire. That was about 5 years ago. Over that period of time, what kinds of changes have you seen in terms of the elderly, their needs, the characteristics that perhaps were different when you started this journey at MAC and now when you retire?
Well, I think you've identified one of the key things that's happening in our community as well as in our country, but particularly so here on the Eastern Shore. And that's the impact of the demographics, the aging of the baby boomers. Baby boomers were the largest number of people ever born in the history of the world. So those are people born between 1945 and 1965. So as a baby boomer's age, they have brought changes in each and every generation they've been through. Here on the shore, it's the fastest growing population that we have. And we also need to understand that not only are people aging on the shore, they're moving here, they're retiring here. So we have an influx of retirees and aging of the population. Unfortunately, we have seen out-migration of younger people. There are not many jobs when people finish school, and often they leave the shore to find better job opportunities. So if you think at it from a point of view of aging, these are your caregivers for a whole generation that's not there. Yeah. Or people who have moved here and left their caregivers behind. So that's put a real strain on the resources of those of us who provide services to the elderly. To give you an idea, when I started out, 1979, we served about 4,000 Meals on Wheels a year. This year we'll serve somewhere between 70 and 75,000 and could serve many more because of the increase in need and the growth in population. So that's just one of many changes that we've seen.
So, I mean, one of the things that obviously face people, particularly as they get older, because we are getting older, we're seeing a lot more illnesses and conditions that perhaps we might not have seen in the past. I mean, heart disease, for example, is now high. Cancer is all high. But in part, that's because we've lived longer. Now, I understand that. I think I saw one where cancer could actually fall down further, and Alzheimer's may very well begin to move up because we're seeing more of those incidents. Those kinds of conditions, how do they affect the elderly in terms of that lifespan, and what should we be thinking about in terms of those are some of the roadblocks that we might run into as we get older? I mean, I remember seeing an ad the other day about a woman who says, well, she's in her early 60s and she has a long life to live, right? I think you've probably seen the ad. And my question is, well, maybe not so, or maybe this is going to be a lot different than she thinks.
Well, we all want that ideal. I'm
Right.
going to be healthy till the day I die.
Right.
That's not the reality. The reality is that 1 in 5 of us, if we live to be late 70s, 80s, we'll probably be faced with some kind of dementia, Alzheimer's type dementia. What kind of plans do we have in place for our care? I just told you about the problem associated with who's going to take care of us. Often we see one frail spouse struggling to care for another spouse. Children live somewhere away, so they turn to agencies like MAC for help. And I can tell you, our resources, Don, over the year, particularly our state and federal funding, has not increased. In many cases, it's decreased. So you have increased population with needs, decreased funding. This has been a very generous and supportive community. Things like the Community Foundation, United Way, private foundations and donors have really helped us fill the plug. So there's a cost to care, and somebody has to provide it. I think if you've been looking at Salisbury University, we've been working with Beacon on a Gray Shore initiative, looking just at that, the impact an aging population has here on the Eastern Shore.
I know, for instance, I was looking at it. I mean, I think it's like round-the-clock home care, if you were to pay for it, something like about $150,000 a year. Assisted living, minimum probably about $4,000. I experienced that, although sometimes it can go up as much as $6,000 a month. And obviously, it's not covered by Medicare. Medicaid will kick in once you reach a certain level in terms of your resources. What kind of impact does that have? I mean, and my own personal experience, it doesn't seem like there's some centralized operation. I know MAC tries to do what it can, but there seems to be sort of scattered shot. You're trying to figure out what's going on, and I mean, what about that?
Yeah, well, if once again you put your finger on another key thing is sort of the changes in healthcare. You're seeing a big drive towards community-based services. Nursing home admissions, nursing home beds, the number is decreasing. Hospital stays, you're lucky if you get to spend the night. It's almost drive-through now. The goal is to provide services in the community outside of acute care facilities, outside of long-term care facilities. And MAC services have really changed to meet those demands. We do provide case management services to frail, low-income older persons who would be eligible for nursing home admission, and we help obtain services for them to enable them to stay in their own home, because that's where your quality of life is by and large. We all want to age in our own home, not in an institution. MAC also at the other end of the spectrum has really, really expanded its services, not only here on the Lower Shore, but statewide, through our new Living Well Center of Excellence, where we offer many evidence-based health programs designed to help people manage their chronic conditions. We partner with 11 different hospital systems in the state, locally PRMC and Atlantic General Hospital, to keep people as healthy as long as possible. So currently we're working with PRMC on with individuals who are cancer survivors, people who have diabetes, people who are managing multiple chronic illnesses, and we found that these partnerships are working for both of us. Some of the programs we offer are Stanford University programs that have proven to help people manage their illnesses, reduce hospital stays, reduce returns to the emergency room. So that's the other part of the picture, is let's keep us healthy, and let's try to provide the services we need to those people who are not healthy, who are frail and need that assistance. It's quite a balancing act.
Now, one of the things that was looking at was, and a lot of the things that we are concerned about when we get older is our cognitive abilities to remember, for example, or maybe we get distracted. There are a whole set of things that come into play. To say nothing about, obviously, our vision begins to go, and hopefully we have glasses and other things that'll keep that and stay, as well as, of course, people just having difficulty hearing. I mean, how does one manage those kinds of things as they begin to happen?
Well, one thing I would encourage people to do is to visit the MAC office. MAC's office is located in Salisbury, Maryland, 909 Progress Circle. It's off Snow Hill Road. MAC is co-located with this disability partner, the Bay Area Center for Independent Living. And we are a designated aging and disability resource center. What that means is anybody who requires information about services or where to go or needs assistance with any type of disability or health impairment, whether it be failing vision, hearing, memory loss, come visit us. We have a showroom. The Bay Area Center for Independent Living has a showroom full of all sorts of gizmos and gadgets designed to help you remain independent. For example, there are probably 20 different types of telephones for almost anything you can think of. If you're hearing impaired, they have telephones designed for people who are hearing impaired. If you have memory problems, they have phones where you can put pictures of someone. So instead of trying to remember a number, you press the picture. You have all sorts of visual aids for people with arthritis, to help them continue to function when they have problems grasping things. And we work very closely with the Bay Area Center for Independent Living, and we will walk an individual coming in from our office to their office, or vice versa. Whichever organization has the service, we want to make sure they get a warm handoff to that organization. So there are things out there to help you live independently.
Well, because a lot of us, we want to live as independently as possible until to that last moment, as it were. How important is that? I mean, so I read some of the literature suggests work as long as you can, for example. It may not be the job that you had during your life, but nonetheless, that it brings some kind of dignity and some kind of independence. Is that the best approach, you think, if you're able to go out or maybe even volunteer?
Sure. Meaningful engagement in your community or in your family, your church, whatever, I think is essential to your overall well-being. Too often we see people retire, they flop back in that lazy boy, and then you have a general decline. Although I must say, we have a new group of people here on the shore, folks who have moved here, retired here, folks with a substantial amount of income who have become entrepreneurs, started new businesses. I mean, you don't want to retire to nothing. You want to find something that will provide meaning to you and your life. Because if you pull yourself out of society, then I think you're going to look forward to depression, general health decline. By the way, depression is a major issue among older people, particularly older men who retire.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, what is this? Is it just a matter of getting them back into doing things, or is there something more to it? I mean, in terms of depression.
I think, well, some late life depression is indeed related to all the things that happen to you in late life, which may be loss of a spouse, loss of job, loss of health, so many losses in how you cope with them. But generally for men, the work has had such a major focus in their life. You take that out of the picture, they're not quite sure which way to go.
Now, is there also, is there a tendency late in life to repair relationships with families and friends, or does that go by the wayside? Do people withdraw? What happens with that? And how important is that in terms of reconnecting?
Oh, relationships are key. We need to have a relationship with, as I said, our community, our friends, our families. We see people coming to our senior center who have lost a spouse or families live away. They've become morose and in some cases clinically depressed. And within 2 or 3 weeks, they have reconnected with a network. And it's like better than any pill you can give somebody, is that meaningful relationship with a group of persons. So that indeed that's a key factor into aging successfully.
Yeah, and the other side of this, of course, is the caregiver, and a lot of us are experiencing it more and more. Where it's, but I think it's just said to my parents that they raised me and took care of me, and then suddenly there I was having to take care of them. What kinds of things would you? Well, how significant is that in terms of the amount of time that say spouses or family members or children are spending? In terms, I think I saw one figure said something like 19 hours a week in some cases.
That's probably 20 hours a week too.
Yeah.
That's
like a part-time job.
Indeed. About 5 years ago, MAC established a caregiver resource center to support not only family caregivers but professional caregivers. We see all sorts of caregivers. Some folks are struggling to care for aging parents while they still have children of their own. Call those folks kind of the sandwich generation.
Right.
They're sort of sandwiched between two generations. Who'd I give attention to today? Others are trying to care for a spouse. Certainly I have been through the caregiving things with parents and with a stepfather who had dementia. You have long-distance caregivers. Mac often gets calls from family members who say, I'm living in Pennsylvania, California, whatever. My mother's in Salisbury. What can you do? How can you help? You usually get the calls after holidays. Kids come home on holidays. And that's when they find out Mom and Dad are not doing as well as they say they're doing. And the kids aren't there to provide the help. So they turn to organizations like ours and say, how can you help? Caregiving is very, very difficult. The caregiver often puts their needs secondary.
Right.
So you see cases where I can vividly recall a good friend caring for her husband who had cancer. And she kept refusing help. See, caregivers don't think anybody can provide care the way they can. It's probably true.
Right. To some extent, yeah.
But they need to take a break and take care of themselves. My friend ended up with a stroke. She was on one floor of the hospital. Her husband was on another floor of the hospital. Because caregiving is indeed a very tough job.
One of the things I was curious about, because you were talking about the sandwiching, one of the phenomena that we're seeing in America today is that women are having kids later in life, which means that there's more of an that they may very well find themselves, their kids raising their families while their parents are older. I mean, it sounds like that's something that's looming on the horizon, maybe.
It's here now.
It's here now, right?
it loomed and it came, and it's going to continue. That's something that we'll see. Probably next 15 to 20 years, we're going to continue to see the increase in the 65-plus population, the 85-plus population, the 100-plus population, and they're all very different. Age 65 to 75 is very different than age 85 to 100. And then you have 100-plus. People are 100-plus living independently. Who would think of this? 100 years ago, life expectancy age 40.
That's right, exactly. I mean, modern medicine is absolutely amazing. You mentioned, by the way, a moment ago, I think one of the most difficult things sometimes I think, is dealing with people who have dementia, that you're seeing them decline, whether it's Alzheimer's or it's other forms as well, because I saw it certainly my own parents. You had your own personal experience. What is that like, and what kind of lessons do you think you learned from that?
Oh, boy. Well, one thing, all of us, I hope every one of your listeners have advance directives where they have a legal document that says, if thus and so happens, I want so-and-so to take care of my affairs. If they don't, and you have an older person who has dementia and is unable to make decisions on his or her behalf, then you're going to have to launch a whole legal procedure to be able to take charge of their affairs if there's no powers of attorney in place, no advance directives, because they don't have the judgment to say, hey, there's something wrong with me. In fact, it's probably quite the opposite.
Right, yes, it's denial.
It's going to be denial. No, it's you. So you may have to launch a guardianship case. To be appointed the legal guardian of a parent or other relatives to help them manage their affairs. Speaking of guardianship, as the director of MAC, I get appointed as a legal guardian of people over the age of 65 who have no one else who can serve, or may have had a family member or other person who has abused them financially or physically. And that is one thing we're seeing more and more of is elder abuse, financial, physical. Some of it is related to the strains of caregiving. You may have heard of the term granny dumping. That's where mother, father, grandmother, whoever gets dumped somewhere. Usually it's Friday afternoon, some hospital emergency room. I was just talking to some colleagues yesterday. They were talking about a client they got dumped at the McDonald's.
Jeez.
You never know where folks are going to get dumped. I was recently appointed as guardian for an elderly man whose son had a friend take him to the emergency room, dump him. He said he couldn't care for him anymore. Son cleaned out the bank account and went to France.
Jeez.
And so here we have a vulnerable elderly person who needs care and has no financial resources and nobody to care for him. And that's where agencies like MAC comes in.
Do you think do you think that's simply the strain of caregiving, or do you think there's just simple greed? Or is it both?
Both, and then I would throw in drug addiction.
Oh, yeah?
Often we'll see an older person's assets depleted by a child or a grandchild who has a problem with addictions.
So what is, we mentioned a moment ago about, so what is it, how is it different, say, between the ages of, say, 65 and, say, 75, as opposed to, say, 75 or 85 or 90 and then beyond? I mean, what kinds of differences are there as you kind of look ahead?
I don't think you do. I think dealing with multiple chronic illnesses, chronic disease self-management is a major initiative that MAC has undertaken. As you age, there is going to be some physical decline, no matter how hard you work on maintaining what you have.
Right.
The fact of the matter is you're going to have some physical decline, as you know, probably maybe in vision, hearing, arthritis, and the older you get, the more likely you're going to have to deal with those issues. Here on the shore, the issues that we're looking at, as you identified, is heart disease, diabetes, epidemic, almost an epidemic of type 2 diabetes here on the shore, cancer, chronic lung problems, breathing problems, and all those impair your ability to do day-to-day things. And then throw in falls. Falls are probably the number one enemy of older persons. MAC just received a major 2-year grant from the Federal Administration on Community Living to do education throughout the state on falls prevention. If somebody is over the age of 65 and they have a major fall, about half those people are not going to be alive in 2 years. That's how traumatic a fall can be to your life.
So quickly, what are you going to do after this? Any ideas? Do you have any plans?
Whatever am I going to do? I don't have any concrete plans except that whatever I do has to have meaning. Because having a wonderful career that's brought meaning to my life, I can't jump into a void. I'll be around. Maybe in Annapolis, people might be hearing from me advocating for the elderly.
There you go. Yeah, meaningful work and activity, I think, is the key. We've been talking with Peggy Bradford. She is the executive director of MAC, that's Maintaining Active Citizens, and she is retiring this year after 37 years. We appreciate you stopping by and chatting with us, and no doubt we will see you again, I'm sure.
You will.
Thank you. This has been Delmarva Today. I'm Don Rush. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for watching Delmarva Today, a production of Delmarva Public Radio. Production and audio engineering by Chris Frank. Hosted by Don Rush. For podcasts, visit delmarvapublicradio.net or subscribe to the Delmarva Today podcast on iTunes. Delmarva Today can now be seen on PAC 14. For the Delmarva Today schedule, visit pac14.org or view the latest issue of the Daily Times.